Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. Do you like visiting museums? Have you ever been in a museum of children's art? What if your museum were showing a collection of paintings of children, and one of the pieces was mysteriously missing? That's what happens to Sammy and Jenny in this new Shoebox Kids mystery. Along the way, Sammy learns that helping others is part of what it means to be a Christian. Chapter 9. Deep in the Earth. Sammy and the others ran out of the garage and looked into the overgrown backyard. DeeDee was nowhere in sight. "Help me!" They heard DeeDee's voice again, but it sounded far away. "DeeDee, where are you?" Sammy yelled. "I'm right here," she yelled back. "I fell down a hole." Mrs. Wallace and Mr. Teller drove up at that moment, and Chris and Maria ran to tell them what had happened. Mrs. Wallace ran to the backyard, and Mr. Teller went to his van to get a rope and a flashlight. "DeeDee," Mrs. Wallace called over the high weeds, "are you all right?" I guess so," DeeDee said quietly. "It's just dark down here." "Keep talking, DeeDee, and we'll find you," Mrs. Wallace said. Mrs. Wallace, Mr. Teller, and the rest of the Shoebox Kids spread out at arm's length from each other. As DeeDee kept calling, they slowly walked across the yard. Suddenly, Maria stopped. "I found her!" Maria shouted. She was in the far end of the backyard. As the others joined her, Maria pushed the high weeds away to show a hole about a foot across in the ground. Sammy could hear DeeDee's voice below them. Mr. Teller lay down on his stomach beside the hole and called down to DeeDee. "DeeDee, we're here now. Are you okay?" "Yeah," she said, and Sammy noticed that she didn't seem to be as scared now. "I got wet when I fell in here. What is this place? It feels like it's made out of cement." Mr. Teller shone his flashlight down at DeeDee. Sure enough, Sammy could see her about 10 feet below them, standing in the water up to her knees. "It looks like some sort of old cistern," Mr. Teller said. "They used to use these to store water. The concrete on this one must have broken through here on the top." He shone his light around for DeeDee to see. "Hold on, DeeDee," Mr. Teller said. "I'll tie a loop in our rope. You put it under your arms, and we'll have you out of there in a jiffy." "Wait," DeeDee said suddenly. Why would DeeDee want to wait to get out of such a scary place? Sammy wondered. "I think I see something down here," DeeDee said. "Mr. Teller, can I borrow your flashlight?" Mr. Teller tied his large flashlight to the end of the rope and lowered it down so DeeDee could reach it. She grabbed it and took it loose. Then Sammy heard her slosh away from the hole where they huddled above her. After a long minute, she yelled back up to them. "There's some sort of pipe sticking into the side of the cistern," she yelled, "and there's something loose inside of it." "Pull it out," yelled Chris. Sammy heard her twisting it and struggling below them. "It's loose in there, but it won't come out. I can push it back in the pipe, but it drops back down." Sammy wanted to jump down in the hole with her and find out what it was she was talking about. "Describe it for us," Sammy finally shouted. "It's metal, and it's round like a tube," she shouted back, "but it has a cap on it. I think there's something in it." She was silent for another long moment. Then Sammy saw her come back to the hole. "Pull me up," she said. "I couldn't get it loose." Mr. Teller lowered the rope again, and DeeDee put it under her arms. They pulled her up through the hole. When she got to the surface, Maria and Jenny hugged her. "I've never been so glad to see the sun," DeeDee said, "and all of you." "We're glad to see you too," Mrs. Wallace said. "You're sure you're all right?" DeeDee nodded. "Just wet," she added. Mrs. Wallace went to get towels and some dry clothes for DeeDee, who was already telling everyone what she saw. "It's like I said, I found a big pipe coming in from the side of the cistern." "It must have been a fill pipe or vent of some sort," Mr. Teller said. "Anyway, I saw something shiny sticking out of it," DeeDee continued. "I tried to pull it out, but it must be attached to a rope or chain on the other end." "It fits!" Everyone turned around to see Jenny grinning and jumping up and down. "What fits?" Sammy asked. "The clues in the Bible." Jenny pulled a piece of paper out of her back pocket. "Look," she said, pointing at her scribbled notes. "The family Bible opened to Micah 7, verse 19, and I noticed that the word depths was underlined. Beside that verse were 3 others, Deuteronomy 5, verse 8, Romans 15, verse 20, and Revelation 20, verse 1. When I looked those verses up, each one had a word underlined as well, beneath, foundation, and chain." Mr. Matheson was trying to tell his children where he hid his last painting. Depths, beneath, foundation, chain. It's in the pipe, DeeDee exclaimed. But how did he get it in there? Maybe that pipe comes out of the ground around here somewhere, Sammy said. Most likely it comes out where the old studio used to stand, Mr. Teller said. But we've already looked around for the concrete slab and couldn't find it, Chris said. We need someone who can tell us where it is. I know exactly where it is. Sammy saw DeeDee turn and scream. When he turned, his mouth fell open. In the driveway facing them stood Mrs. Sheckley and the mysterious gray-haired man.
The story you have heard today is a chapter of The Shoebox Kids, Book 5, The Broken Dozen Mystery, written by Glenn Robinson, edited and created by Jerry D. Thomas, and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.